Hello and welcome to a short film about language and how it fits within the TOK course. To be fair, this is quite a difficult theme as there are various ramifications for the different areas of knowledge as well as knowledge more generally. One of the main issues is that language itself is ambiguous, and at the same time language can also be very precise. Language is also fundamental to the two questions of TOK. What do we know and how do we know it? In terms of how do we know, knowledge is expressed through language. Even mathematics and physical expressions are a way of expressing knowledge. And this is especially true given that the TOK course is mostly concerned with propositional knowledge. For example, Lima is the capital of Peru, and that is expressed linguistically. In terms of how do we know, the central theme is whether language describes or prescribes knowledge. And the answer really is both. In terms of describing knowledge, one example comes from the sciences, Newton's law of gravity. All objects exert a force of attraction on other objects. That seems pretty straightforward. However, you can also see that language sets the limits and defines the concepts of what we can know. And this is best seen when comparing different languages. For example, in ancient Greek, there are 6 different words for love. And in English, well, we just have one. Other great examples come from comparing Japanese to English. For example, Shirin-joku is the idea of taking a relaxing walk in a forest that's beneficial for your well-being, being immersed in nature. And there is Urusu, which is the idea of pretending not to be home when someone calls to visit. Now, of course, you can express these ideas in English, but the fact that we don't have a specific word for them, I think, is a clue to the different ways of thinking, the different concepts, and in a way, the way that language can prescribe what it's possible to know. The extent of the influence of language here is different for different areas of knowledge. And I think this is very important when it comes to emotion and abstract ideas such as metaphysical ideas such as God. So, without further ado, let's go to the PowerPoint and I'll try and explain a little more of what I'm talking about.
The issue with language is that language is both precise, rule-governed, yet it's also vague and breaks those rules. And because of these two characteristics, language is a very difficult way of knowing to describe and encapsulate. Chief amongst the problems is that of meaning, because language, if it is to do anything, is to convey and express meaning. Delving a little bit more into the detail of theories of meaning, there are 4 very common ones: definition, denotation, connotation, and image. And they all suffer from the same problem, which is ambiguity. In each of these, the meaning can change depending on the context, depending on the intention of the speaker, and also how that word is understood by the listener. So the result of this is there is a lot of meaning attached to words given these different theories or ways of understanding them, but those meanings are themselves ambiguous. If you'd like a little bit more detail about this ambiguity, I suggest you look at a video that I made, What is Art? And in that, I talk at length really about the problems of defining words, understood through the definition game, and then a solution to that which is provided by Wittgenstein. Keeping with Wittgenstein, I'm going to now offer a related theory of his, which is that of language games, and that language functions according to rules that are understood by all speakers of that language. Imagine you're playing a game of chess and during the game you say to your opponent, offside. What would be their reaction? Well, they'd probably say, what are you talking about? Offside has no meaning. You're playing the wrong game. You say offside in football. Offside doesn't work in chess. Now, this idea is very important when it comes to language. Any word or sentence that you speak in any particular language is governed by the rules of that language. And anybody who is partaking in that conversation will be aware of the rules of language, just as in the game of chess. So when you say offside in chess, nobody will understand what you're saying. However, if you're inside a football stadium and you say offside, the referee will understand, the players will understand, the fans will understand, both in the stadium and at home. And the difference is that offside inside the game of football has meaning and significance, and everybody who is partaking in that game understands what offside means. The main point to remember then is that language itself is not fixed, it's elastic. It depends on context and it depends on the meaning ascribed to that language by the partakers in it. So meaning is very much dependent on context, and it's dependent on how the speakers are using the language. Yes, it is true that languages conform to their specific grammatical rules that have a very logical structure. However, these rules are not obeyed strictly. They are flexible, they are understood and changed by speakers at all times, the result of which is clearly evident in that language changes over time, and it also changes for different speakers in different locations representing different cultures. Therefore, going back to the example of offside and checkmate, these phrases have meaning according to the game in which they're applied. If you take that word or phrase outside of that game, then the meaning is lost. Making a quick link here to religious knowledge systems, the expression God is love was criticized by the logical positivists because it didn't have any meaning. Their argument was that you could not test God is love, true or false. Therefore, it was meaningless. And their approach to testing it would be in a scientific way to apply the rules of falsification and verification. However, given Wittgenstein's language game theory, you could defend the meaning and significance of an expression such as God is love because the logical positivists have taken it outside of the language game where it does have meaning. If you understand God is love inside a church or within a religious community, then everybody in that community will understand exactly what God is love means. So this is very important when we understand language in terms of the different areas of knowledge. In the different areas of knowledge, language functions according to that rules prescribed by and shared by the area of knowledge and the people in that area of knowledge. The consequence of language games is, first of all, language very much has meaning. Humans use language, the different languages that there are, and meaning is expressed, understood, communicated without any problem at all. And meaning very much lies on the surface, according to Wittgenstein. There's nothing hidden for a philosopher to uncover and reveal the logical essence of. The key to understanding language, according to language games then, is that meaning is given to language in terms of how we use it and how we understand the expressions and the words that we use.
As I mentioned in the introduction, language is fundamental to the TOK course in terms of both what do we know and how do we know it. There are obvious connections here to various issues. For example, the classical philosophical problem of universals and particulars, which is really about defining concepts and applying them to specific instances of those. And that issue is relevant to various areas of knowledge. For example, in the natural sciences, if you're going to understand in biology what is a primate, what is a fish, these are universals that then you apply to the particular example of those. The issues of connotations, fluidity of meaning, flexibility of interpretation is also fundamental to all of the different areas of knowledge. It hints at the importance of being precise in terms of what knowledge you're explaining, what is the meaning and significance of all of that, and it also hints to the role of meaning and context, especially given the example in language games raised with the logical positivists and their assessment of the expression God is love. The main thing I want you to take away from this film is that language is fundamental to the TOK course in terms of both what do we know and how do we know it. Furthermore, meaning in knowledge is given in the language used to describe it. Yet that language is ambiguous, flexible, given the nature of language itself, which is context dependent and dynamic. Thanks very much for watching, and please don't forget to smash the like button.